Hello and welcome to the summer season of Different Leaf the podcast, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Brit Smith. This season, we're going to be hearing some truly inspiring and eye-opening stories from the developing world of weed, including new trends in cannabis and travel, the indigenous cannabis movement, the story of the former drug kingpin who's now CEO of a dispensary that employs formerly incarcerated people in New York, and much, much more. Many of the stories that you're going to hear this podcast season are also being covered in the new spring issue of Different Leaf the magazine, which just hit thousands of newsstands across the US and Canada, like select Barnes & Noble bookstores, CVS pharmacies, and loads of cannabis dispensaries. You can find your local in-person retailer at differentleaf.com, or you can order yourself a copy of the new summer issue to be mailed to you at differentleaf.com. This episode, we're going to talk about cannabis hospitality. Now, we're going way beyond the infused dining experience to talk about traveling cannabis consumers who are starting to enjoy weekend-long stays at luxury resorts, indulging in high-end dinners and breakfasts created by top-tier chefs. This episode, we're going to talk to our fabulous cannabis and food writer, Chala June, about their latest article in Different Leaf the magazine on page 46, which is all about the so-called Bougiest 420 experience in the country. The Bud and Breakfast with Chef Solomon Johnson of Cannescape. You might recognize the name Chef Solomon Johnson as the winner of the 4th episode of the Food Network's Chopped 420 show. As Chala covers in their article, last year, for a little over $600, guests were indulging in Chef Johnson's fine dining experience, not only for dinner, but for breakfast the following day too. And in between, they got to stay at Dr. Wilson's backyard resort and mineral springs in the heart of California's Napa Valley. They enjoyed all the perks of the resorts, the views, the pool, the spa, all while the cannabis set in. We're going to talk about Chala's experience trying the elevated Bud and Breakfast, what kinds of infused dinners and breakfast dishes they got to enjoy with Cannescape, how the entire energy of the getaway changes when you're allowed to stay somewhere overnight, and what Chala sees as the future for high-end infused dining and travel experiences. We'll be right back to chat with Different Leaf writer Chala June. Chala, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Britt. I am thrilled to be here.
So, for folks that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about your background as a writer and where your passion for food and cannabis comes from?
Absolutely. So my background as a professional writer, I have a degree in publishing, and I've been obsessed with magazines my entire life, which is what led me there. And there was a point towards the end of getting that degree where I was trying to figure out what I was actually going to do with a degree in publishing in this day and age. And my passion for food really came back to the surface. I was pushing to write for food publications. So through writing freelance for a few years while also working in kitchens and as a prep baker and a cheesemonger for a few years as well, I managed to land a job at Bon Appetit.
Ooh.
And I was there for 2 years working as the associate print editor. Big print magazine nerd here. Print is everything. Print is life.
We agree.
And that really helped me establish myself in the world of food media and really helped me establish that food is the lens through which I want to continue to investigate and inspect and explore the world. So when I got to a point where I was able to start really looking at cannabis more closely as well, and a lot of that came through being lucky enough to go to LMCC, the Luxury Meets Cannabis Conference, and meet a lot of really incredible people there and incredible brands there, I realized that there is this huge intersection between food and cannabis that is so magical and that is so ripe for exploration that isn't really being discussed in an intentional way in mainstream media. There's a lot of cannabis media that looks at food as a vehicle for consuming cannabis, which it is. And there's a lot of food media that looks at cannabis as maybe something that's a little interesting, but kind of gimmicky. And so the question I was kind of asking is how can we bridge those two and be really intentional about how we look at the intersection of culinary cannabis and where it's headed? So
Hmm.
that's what brings me here.
That's beautiful. We're so excited to have you on the Different Leaf crew. So let's talk a bit about your favorite food background, your favorite cannabis background. What are your roots when it comes to food?
My roots when it comes to food, gosh, I've been like an obsessive eater since childhood. I was that kid like glued to the TV watching the Food Network, watching Emeril Lagasse
Hmm.
just like bam his way through the kitchen. And I was like, food is so cool. Like there's fire and knives and everyone's running around. And that led me to be a really adventurous eater from an early age. That and also my dad is Congolese, so there was always an exploration. There was always an understanding that food is a vehicle for culture and a vehicle for exploration. And when it comes to cannabis, gosh, I think it's been a solid, I can say, decade now that I've been
Hmm.
consuming. And it feels very like old stoner to be like, back in my day, I was smoking out of soda cans behind the high school, but that's really what it was just after school with my friends, getting up to shenanigans and just what it really was creating a kind of pocket for ourselves where we could feel like grown-ups and have our own little pseudo society and not have to play by anybody else's rules. And that's why we
Yeah.
loved it, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. That's totally what it was. And for me, when I was a kid, the crossover between food and cannabis was just, I'm trying to make a brownie because it's the easiest way to eat and feel that body high. But now, obviously, with legalization, we've come so, so much further than those teenage years of eating brownies. Now we're doing like cannabis infused dining experiences. And something that you've written about for Different Leaf is the bud and breakfast. So it's not just a dinner and like a top-notch dinner, but it's also staying in a really gorgeous resort with like-minded folks and then waking up and having an infused breakfast together. I have never in my life heard of such a cool experience as this. I have done a cannabis dining experience, but it was just a dinner. What was it that interested you about writing about this experience with Cannescape?
Yeah, so I came across Cannescape on Instagram. I had saw that they were doing some really incredible work out in the Bay Area, doing these infused overnight luxury experiences. 5 course infused dinner the evening before, and then they would work with boutique hotels to have guests enjoy a stay at the hotel. And then there's a 2 course infused breakfast the next day.
Ugh.
And I had been to a few infused dining experiences as well, but like you said, nothing like this, nothing that really took the kind of full 360 of hospitality into consideration.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, I need to know everything there is to know about this. I need to dive into this, like what is going on, because being someone whose background is in food, obviously like hospitality brushes up on that a lot, having worked in restaurants, but also a lot of food is, travel as well and
Mm.
hotels as well. All of that plays a big part in what we consider the food industry.
Hmm.
And so when looking at how cannabis gets incorporated into that, we're looking at all of these pieces of hospitality as well. So seeing that someone was actually doing that, I was like, I have to know more.
Yeah. So you went out there and you met Chef Solomon Johnson, the man behind Cannescape, the high-end experience of the dinner, the stay in the Napa Valley region, and then having breakfast with somebody like Chef Johnson. What was he like to talk to?
Absolutely. So I actually came across Chef Johnson. I had heard about Cannescape and I had heard about his work kind of like separately, and it was interesting because I was told about his work through my brother, who is also like obsessed with food, who's also obsessed with cannabis. And it turns out that he and Chef Johnson went to high school together. So, like,
No
we are from the
way.
same hometown. The world is like this big. He's like, yeah, this guy I went to school with is doing some really cool, like, cannabis cooking stuff up in the Bay. Like, you should check that out. And I was like, he's the chef
Wow, that is a
that's
small world.
doing this infused, dining experience that I already had my eyes on. And I was like, the world is like insanely tiny. So
Yeah.
it's him and his business partner, Chelsea Davis. She's a journalist in the Bay Area as well, who has a big background in travel and leisure. So that's how the sort of overnight and travel component became a part of it as well.
Mm.
And it was incredible to be able to go out to the Napa Valley for 420. It was like the bougiest 420 experience I had had in my entire life. Because again, go back to like smoking out of soda cans and like literal garbage with my friends and being like, it's 420, let's celebrate. So like to be in the Napa Valley, like on this mountain, and the sun is shining and the weather is gorgeous, and everyone's just there relaxing because we're at this resort that has a spa and mud baths and heated pools. Like,
Oh my
it was
gosh.
very, very surreal to get there and be like, and now I'm going to just enjoy my 420 because I'm so used to like marathoning the day, like taking bong rips in people's apartments and like seeing how we're going to make it through. So to get there, it was just, you could feel yourself just like exhale and be ready just like for the luxury of it all. And the dinner was incredible. One of the dishes that was really memorable, there was this like watermelon salad that had like pickled watermelon rind, and there was like a smoked yogurt at the base of it, and it was so beautifully plated and all of the flavors played together so well. And I think that was like the first dish to come out, and from that point that just set the tone that we were gonna get this experience that really was something that was like elevated and intentional and really beautiful. And it was also fun to go through the dinner and see the sense of playfulness that chef brings to his dishes and to his plates. Like, everything was incredibly beautiful and well done, but there was also like a bit of whimsy into like each of the dishes that really reminded you that like this isn't your typical course menu pairing type of thing. This is somewhere where you're supposed to come and enjoy and really relax. And something I really enjoyed about it too, that I hadn't experienced at other infused dining events I've been to, is all of the dishes were infused by Chef CBD, but each guest got 30 milligrams of THC oil to infuse each plate themselves. So people could kind of customize, you know, if they wanted more, if they wanted less. And I think that that led to this really fun environment where everyone felt very in control. Because I've gone to cannabis dinners where people are kind of nervous. They're not quite sure if they're going to overdo it or not. Or maybe they're like, oh, yeah, I really want to, you know, go to the top level, and they can't handle it.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. And like, they think they can handle more than they can. So it was a really nice way to bring in that agency and also that sort of education so that people can see like, okay, this is how, you know, 5 milligrams per dish is going to affect me. And so all of that intention was really baked into the event. And that was something that was, I think, unlike anything I'd experienced before.
I loved that. When I was reading through your article in Different Leaf in the summer issue, it was like, it lit a light bulb over my head. I was like, of course, self-dosing. Like, all of the dinners that I've been to before, they ask you at the beginning usually, do you want to be low, medium, or high dose? And they'll put some sort of marker on your chair or something in front of you on the table to remind themselves which dish to give you. And they just come around and sort of do 3 rounds and give out the dishes as needed. But then I felt like I couldn't change if I wanted to lower it. I didn't want to like bug the staff. You know, they were very busy. So this really lets you take part in your experience and have that control over it. And also having the CBD base coming from chef, that must be a really nice balanced kind of high that builds throughout the meal, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely. Like, that level of like relaxation, that base was already there, so that if you wanted to go a little higher, you already felt like you had that baseline to work from. And when it comes to infusions, personally, I love a THC CBD balance. Like, I feel like it puts me in just a really great full body space, as opposed to sometimes, you know, just THC, I can be like very cerebral and only kind of moving through my head instead of having the high like circle through my whole body. And I was fortunate enough to like meet other people at the dinner, some of whom had never been to an infused dinner, some of whom were like kind of curious and really just exploring because there were other journalists there as well.
Wow.
And so knowing that there was that CBD base there as well also gave certain people permission to kind of lean into maybe trying a little more THC than they would have initially because they knew that the CBD would be there to really balance them out.
Really, I love that. That is so different from anything I've ever heard before. So you mentioned the watermelon salad and that smoky yogurt. What other dishes stuck out to you in the mind? Because as well as that beautiful high, the photos of the food looked beyond
The
gorgeous.
food was incredible. There was this really gorgeous, like, crab tart that had this cream sauce in it, and it was topped with like salmon roe that was like incredible. And like being from the same hometown as Chef, like afterwards, I was like, "Was that blue crab in the tart?" He's like, "Yep." Had to bring some Maryland into the menu, and
Yeah.
the little bits of intention like that were really so appreciated. And then even there was this really great like black bean soup that he had done, which I
Mm,
love a good bean soup.
yeah.
And there was a tempered cannabis leaf in it. And
Wow.
it was not only a visually like beautiful presentation, this cannabis leaf just like with the crispy edges in the soup, but it added this gorgeous like textural element. It really rounded out the whole dish. And it was also a cool opportunity, me being a uber food nerd, to like talk to other people about like, oh, the leaf isn't gonna add any sort of like effects, but hemp is really good for your
Yeah.
digestion, and like hemp has a lot of great protein. So like on a culinary standpoint, it's really cool to just like eat the leaf as well. And so the layers to how he thought through that menu, it was so clear just eating it before I even actually got to chat with him about the menu, just
Hmm.
how much thought went into every single piece of that menu. And the next morning for the breakfast, there was this incredible like pulled pork hash
Oh
that
my
had like
goodness.
a beautifully poached egg on it, which like one, I had woken up from maybe the best sleep of my life,
I was
having
gonna
had
say, you must have
that.
been rested.
I was so rested. I had gotten like spa and massage treatments the
Oh,
day before the dinner. And then we had that beautiful infused dinner, and the beds were so soft. We were at Dr. Wilkinson's resort in the Napa Valley, and the beds were so soft, and I slept like an angel.
mm-hmm.
And then to wake up and be like, and there's an infused breakfast waiting for me and some
Oh my
coffee, and I'm
gosh.
going to enjoy this as the sun rises over the Napa Valley. Like,
Are you kidding me? This is heaven.
truly heaven,
Wow.
truly a heavenly experience.
What
Yeah.
else was infused at breakfast? Was it just that hash? Did they have the coffee infusion? Because I've tried those before.
The coffee wasn't infused, but it was from Landrace Origins, which
Oh,
is a cannabis and coffee brand. And we got to also, in the goodie bags, they had some of the Landrace Origin pre rolls as well. So we got to like try the coffee pairing with the cannabis, which was really beautiful. And I love all of the work that Amber Center is doing with that company. It's really incredible to see. But there was the hash dish, and then there was also a yogurt parfait with like fresh berries and honey, and that was
hmm,
infused as well. Like it was the perfect breakfast. And I love that it was only two courses because I was like, I don't need anything more than this. I have a whole day to go about. I have
yeah.
a whole interview to try to do right now, so it
Compose
was
yourself.
really compose myself. So it was really nice to just like wake up fully refreshed. And like I had been doing some traveling a week before I went out for that trip as well. So I was kind of run ragged. I had been out of the country. I was like getting my wits about me. So to go out there and for that 48 hours just be like, I don't have to worry about anything.
Mm,
I'm going to be fully taken care of. That's what hospitality is really about, to
yeah.
go somewhere and know you are going to fully be taken care of. And I think that that is something that with cannabis dining experiences, more chefs are trying to bring more of that. And a lot of the chefs, when you're at the dinner, you're being fully taken care of. But I do know people who, because they're eating infused products, there is sometimes that worry of like, okay, well, once I leave the dinner, if I continue to feel the effects, if they're not as used to consuming, how is that experience going to be? So
That's a very good point.
to be in an environment where it's like, okay, you had this beautiful infused dinner, this beautiful experience, and now you don't have to drive. You don't have to get on the subway. You don't have to go back to your house or your apartment. You can just go enjoy a float at the pool. You can go watch a movie in your hotel room. You can sit outside and enjoy a smoke if you want to. Was really something that I think shifted the energy, because people really felt like, okay, this entire evening I'm being taken care of. I don't have to leave these doors and then worry about, okay, what's happening next.
And back to reality. You don't
And
want
back to reality.
You don't want to
yeah.
leave that quickly. Like, it's nice to have a slumber party with some other stoners, right?
Absolutely, because I've gone to infused dinners where I've had an incredible time, and then I'm back on the New York City subway trying to make it home, and I'm like,
where am I?
What is going on?
The relaxation is very quickly over.
Back
to reality.
Absolutely over, yeah.
So speaking of some of the things that you're seeing chefs trying to do now, like incorporate like getting home safely or staying overnight or like coming down at the end of your meal with a lot of CBD to sort of bring you back down. What else excites you about the new world of infused dinners? It's so very different. Like year to year, we're seeing so much change.
Absolutely. My favorite dining experiences are the ones where like the dining experience is what you are there for. I've been to events where it's kind of like you go to a prefix dinner, but then you're expecting to go out to something else after. Like dinner is just a part of the evening instead of the entire event. But the best experiences I have had are the ones where maybe there's live music there. I went to one where there was like a sound artist doing sound baths.
Whoa.
As a part of the experience. That was one of the chef for hire dinners. So Mike, who's in one of your issues previously. I love it when there is that extra something brought to the dinner, more than just, okay, we're going to feed you and you're going to get stoned, but we're creating an intentional environment. We're bringing you in, we're giving you an experience that is really going to elevate you. And also when the dinners are really paced out in a way where people are able to take their time, not only with the food, but with the environment and with each other. I love being able to go to an infused dinner and meet new people and just like make friends with other stoners or potential future stoners.
Totally.
And just be able to build out that space for community. And I think that it's something that we think about a lot in cannabis as the legalization continues to move forward. A lot of the community that was built was because cannabis was underground. We had to build community because we couldn't be out in public. We had to be the kids behind the high school because that was the community we were able to form. So in asking how do we build community above ground, in the daylight, out of the shadows, I think that bringing that to the table is so powerful, because we know that the dining table is how we've built community as human beings for millennia. So it only makes sense to bring a ritualistic plant like cannabis into that world, but remembering the origins of the ritual, not just being like, we're going to throw some food and weed and like push it out to people, but really remembering the origins of the ritual of feeding people and what goes into that. And so I think what excites me the most are the chefs who are building out that entire ritual and bringing experience to it, as opposed to just feeling like doing a quick turnover, because that happens a lot in the food industry, of course. Like you want to sell your plates, you want that quick turnover, you want people in and out. But I think trying to do that with cannabis infused dining is a mistake. And I think that that can be potentially very harmful too, if we're just quickly turning over and sending people out on the street. I think that these longer experiences where people are going for the food, for the environment, for the soiree of it, it also feels very like 1920s dinner club in like a very fun way. Like you're going out to eat and maybe there's a jazz band and like everyone feels luxurious. But I think that that kind of slow dining, instead of, fast dining that we're so used to, and we want to go in and eat our food and, get out and go about our night. I think bringing slow dining back
Mm-hmm.
and using cannabis as the tool to do that is the most thrilling thing to me, because then you're also able to appreciate the food more. And
Yes.
these chefs are not playing around when it comes to this food. The way that they're sourcing from farms, the way that they're working with seasonal ingredients, with every part of an ingredient. Like I said, that watermelon salad, he pickled the rinds so that he could use as much of the fruit as possible. Like, these aren't just chefs coming in off the street and saying, we'll see what works. Like, they know what they're doing. They're putting so much craft behind what they're doing. So why wouldn't you want to take 2 hours out of your evening and just sit there and enjoy it all
Yeah,
with
yeah.
people who are also just happy to be there and eat and get stoned, you know?
Yeah, I've met some incredibly good new friends at dining experiences here in Boston. They are often held sort of at private locations at somebody's house, so you get to know the homeowner who's opened up their home to you. And you're right, it's like the old school way of building community. It's family dining together. It reminds me of when I was waiting tables back in the day, and we'd sit down for family dinner before we'd wait tables. Like, we'd all eat together beforehand, and we'd all go out for a very, very early breakfast afterwards together. But like, that's how we connected, and it was over sharing food and enjoying food together. And it's like, now I can do that with my local community, or I can go somewhere new and do it with new community and meet the folks who also enjoy food and cannabis, but in California instead of out here. And the other thing I like about traveling to try these things is that you get to try the local weed, the local food, and the local cuisine, because that's going to be really different to where you live. So while I may go to some dining experiences out here in Boston and New York, I'm really, really excited about the states that I don't live in to try their food. Like, I want some really good Southern cooking, and I want that infused. And I want some tacos in Southern California. Oh my God, give me fish tacos.
Yes.
I want to try stuff everywhere else. So this is a really exciting place to learn about. For folks that do want to go and try this experience, you can read more about it in the summer issue of Different Leaf. Chala has written an absolutely amazing review of their time there and the experience of meeting Chef Solomon Johnson, who sounds like a real character as well, which I love to.
And he's a fun guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I love to be around chefs that are a good time. There are also some similar experiences that I know about if you're not in the Napa Valley area, if that's too far for you, that's not your sort of vibe. I know of one in LA by the Herbal Chef, and it's called the Secret Supper Club, which is kind of a cool underground experience. And it's that slow dining again, like you were talking about, like taking the time to meet the other people that come to dinner with you. In New York, I mean, there's so many, but we love Chef Hawaii Mike. We've done an episode with him. We've got him in one of our magazine issues, and he does the chef for hire flights, and he does a lot of different dishes. And then one that I heard about, which is sort of off the beaten path, is Phoenix, Arizona. And there's Chef Derek Upton, who does Elevated Under the Stars at the Clarendon Hotel and Spa on the roof.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to go to Phoenix now.
Right. I know. So I'm excited to try all these different states. Like, I've never tried Phoenix weed. I didn't even really know they had good weed.
You know, I didn't either, but I am really excited to try now. I'm like, what is Arizona bringing to the table?
Yes. And I mean, those sunsets have got to be gorgeous in the night sky. It's got to be just one of those experiences where you really connect with nature and connect with the outdoors and the elements and all the people around you on the rooftops. So there's a lot of cool things coming to travel and infused dining. Is there anything new that you've got your finger on the pulse on that you want to let our listeners know about?
Nothing that comes to mind right now. You just mentioned some like incredible people doing really great work, and just in general, I'm just really excited about the intersection of food and cannabis, not only with all of these incredible chefs, but also the really amazing infused products that we're starting to see on the market as well, and all of the great infused brands that are out there. Like, I just tried Tempo crackers for the first time a few weeks ago.
Yummy.
Mind blown. I was like, I can have my cheese and cracker snack and get a little toasty in the afternoon.
I'll take
like,
it.
Unbelievable. So it's just an exciting world at the intersection of food and weed out there.
It truly, truly is. Chala, thank you so much for joining us today. And again, make sure that you check out the Different Leaf summer issue, Travel and Tourism, with Chala's piece, Bud and Breakfast, on page 46. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
A huge thanks to our guest, Chala June. Remember to check out their article on Chef Solomon Johnson on page 46 in the new summer issue of Different Leaf, the magazine, which just hit shelves across the US and Canada. You can find your local in-person retailer at differentleaf.com or go to differentleaf.com and order a copy to be mailed to you. Next week, we'll be talking to the inspiring Executive Director of the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association, Mary Jane Oatman.
What happened with tribal communities happened far before Prohibition. In the late 1800s, they started to criminalize gatherings of Indigenous communities. They outlawed our spiritual ways. They put on full-out campaigns of indoctrinating our society and communities with Christianity. And that has been our experience and a part of the reason why there has been a deep fracture in the sacrament, as well as the plant as a medicine and plant as an economy has happened so drastically, is through that forced assimilation.
And writer Santiago Rodriguez Tarditi, who profiled Mary Jane and her important work with the Indigenous cannabis community in the summer issue of Different Leaf, the magazine.
Nobody except the community and the natives who have to live there and engage on a day-to-day with these sort of oppressions and limitations are actually doing something about it. So Mary Jane has developed a global network of other communities who have also felt this limitation from the governments and are uniting in order to claim their rights towards themselves and their relationship with nature.
Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening right now so you don't miss the next episode. Be a love and give us a review. Make sure you're following us on social media at Different Leaf, and I'm on social media at Brit the British. And get your summer travel issue of Different Leaf the magazine out now at select retailers and at differentleaf.com.